Old Town Chicago, the kind of Friday night where the city air smells like hot stone and the river. I had just cracked my prayer book to say Compline when someone knocked with that neighborly double tap, knuckles on wood that say, "I know you're home." "Who is it?" I called. No answer. Another knock. "Who?" "Hey, Matt," a voice said, warm as a hand on the shoulder. "Open up." I swung the door wide. My father-in-law stood on the landing, smiling. His driver hauled up 2 grocery sacks heavy enough to dent thigh. Beside them was my nephew Nate, and a girl Nate's age, 8 or 9, hair blunter to shoulders, T-shirt with a faded daisy pressed over the heart. She looked uppity and smiled the way kids do when they're trying to polite in front of someone else's grown-ups. Come in, I said, stepping back. The chain clanked. The hall light threw a yellow pool across our hard wood. I meant to ask whose daughter she was, but my wife called from the kitchen about a pot threatening to boil over, and I set my book down and went to help. Even while my hands were on a saucepan, I kept thinking, I know everyone. Who is she? When I finished Compline, I turned and found my wife behind me. "Who's the girl with Nate?" I asked. "What girl?" she said, eyebrows pinched together. "The girl who walked in right there." I pointed. My father-in-law sat in the armchair, head bowed over his rosary. The driver was setting the sacks on the dining table. Nate was in our son's room, stilting his legs out to watch cartoons. There was no one else. When I asked Nate, he shrugged without looking away from the screen. "Just me and Grandpa," he said. Days later, I had the cat with me up on the roof deck. A lazy loop of summer, watering the pots while the sun shrugged itself down the far side of the buildings. Our cat is a coward in a fur coat, always ready to climb onto the nearest human if a paper bag flinches. That day she went rigid, as if someone had put her on pause, ears forward, whiskers like drawn blades, a low hum in her throat. Her eyes tracked my right shoulder, then scraped slowly left, 1 foot at a time, as if watching someone pace behind me. There was nothing behind me but a parapet and 7 stories of air. "Stop it," I whispered, to her or to whatever tuned her like an instrument. I crossed myself. The air felt suddenly dense, like the seconds before a thunderhead lets go. The stairwell cat came on a different night, when the building felt empty as a jar. We'd seen a white cat slip into a neighbor's place more than once, and then simply not be inside when the neighbor looked. Near midnight, I cracked the door, put bare feet on concrete, and followed it up the steps. The building had gone quiet enough that you could hear your own breath bounce off the painted cinder block. The cat moved with a deliberateness that felt rehearsed. Up 1 flight, turn, pause another, its tail a metronome. The roof gate was shut with a fat brass lock. There was nowhere forward to go. The cat turned the corner and was not there. Not ran, not jumped, not slid under, just wasn't. I said aloud to an empty stairwell, "You're not allowed here." And the echo that came back sounded like an answer you didn't understand, but believed. In a mill town in the Pacific Northwest, fog that stuck to your hair, pines that made constant whispers. My friend's parents were living in a company house while his dad managed a shift. His mother was very pregnant. That slow, deliberate sort of pregnant, where the world narrows to the next chair and the next measured breath. Miss Alma came 3 mornings a week and did everything that feels like salt and light in a home. Clean things, put them where they belonged, hum under a breath while she did it. She was tall and spare, and the sort of dependable that makes you forget what chaos used to look like. Then she didn't come. One afternoon, my friend's mother was standing in the living room, trying to breathe through a pain she thought might never end. The knock at the door was so normal, it felt like a joke God was playing on her. She dragged herself over and opened up. "Goodness, honey," Miss Alma said, in the voice she saved for scaring away other people's troubles. "Let's sit you down." The way she moved my friend's mother felt like being lifted through water. No weight, no effort, only the suggestion of motion. "I'll take care of the rest," Alma said. "There are house sounds you learn by heart, even if you don't want to. The tap of dish against dish, water hissing on steel, the broom's soft, insistent argument against grit. With her eyes closed, my friend's mother tracked them like stations of a map. The glass of water Miss Alma pressed into her hand tasted as if she'd forgotten how good water could be. Cold, sweet, the world's throat-clearing, the first thing anyone ever drank when the lights came on. Later, the sound started again. My friend's mother stood and leaned in the kitchen doorway. Miss Alma turned, smiling as if caught play a favorite song too loudly. When Mom walked down the hall, she saw Alma seated on a stool by the bathroom sink, arms sunk in suds up to the elbow, humming the same tune. She went back to the kitchen, and Alma was there too, drying a plate that had no water left on it. The next morning, Miss Alma arrived with a paper sack. "For you," she said. Inside was a big jar of dill pickles, still cool from the store. My friend's mother laughed and cried at the same time. "How did you know?" Alma smiled at her like rain. "Honey, I've been a mother." That night, Mom told her husband about seeing Alma in 2 places at once. He rubbed his face and said they'd get some help in from the office until she felt better. A week later, at school drop-off, another mother said quietly at her shoulder, "I'm so sorry about Miss Alma." The words hit with the bright clarity of something already known but not yet admitted. Car accident. A month ago, her daughter in the back seat, both gone at the scene. My friend's mother walked home without remembering the route. The glass Alma had used still had a print on it, like a small, cloudy moon. In the years that followed, when teachers scolded her little girl too harshly for daydreaming, their hands would go numb for an hour or two, fingers unwilling, grip slackening around chalk or pen. No one ever said anything about pickles again, but there were always 2 jars in the pantry. Galesburg, 1987. The kind of night the cornfields go silver and the air grows thin under the stars. My friend's grandfather had walked people through coughs and rashes and night terrors long enough to know how sounds change at 1 a.m. after a burial. The men at the cemetery had stamped their feet and said goodnight. The last car had been swallowed by the road. The shovel had rung hollow on the dirt and then fallen silent. He took the path he always took, past the potter's field, over the ditch where someone had once laid boards, up to the county road where the blacktop held the day's heat like a mouth holds a secret. The cat that crossed him was just a cat. The dog a moment later was a big one. But there are big dogs everywhere. He thought of how people tell themselves stories to quiet the inside of their heads, and kept walking. The potter's field had a fence that had always looked tired, and a sign that had always seemed angry. No fires, no trespassing, no dumping. He had read it so often his eyes slipped over it like rain over old paint. That's why the fire beyond the fence hit him in the stomach. His eyes were not prepared to tell him anything new. Orange light made a cradle, and in it lay the outline of a body in the strange surgical clarity of a night on fire. Around it stood men, tall, straight, still as cut posts, their faces turned together toward him as if time had hiccuped and made a single long moment hang in the air like breath held. He walked on. Because you do. Because you tell yourself people still break rules and get away with it, and maybe you just saw smoke and no more. 50, 60 yards on, he turned his head, and from that distance, those faces still seemed to be looking back at him, like coins at the bottom of a glass. He turned down the dirt lane toward home, the kind that makes its own noise under boots, gravel lightly snapping like someone rolling their knuckles. 100 yards from his gate, something moved by the burn barrel everyone in that county had. He could smell it. Wet cardboard, old ink, a sweetness like paper saved too long. The man standing there had shoulders he recognized from an hour ago, and fingers he could swear he had seen splayed on the stuttering light of fire. The stick in his hand cracked when he flexed it, dry in the damp. My friend's grandfather woke on the mudroom floor with a bruise blooming on his temple and a rooster make an unholy racket, as if he already knew the story they were going to go tell no one. The next day they went back to the field with men and their hands and their opinions. Nothing. No ash, no char. The fence still old, the sign still angry, the fire nowhere you could put your finger. Pennsylvania Dutch country carries its own weather inside the stories people tell. My grandfather was young and stubborn and preferred his own bed to anyone else's hospitality, thank you very much. After his cousin's wedding ran later than late, he looked at the clock in the station and counted backward. Midnight train, 3 miles by track, home by 2. He lit a cigarette for the walking and kept another behind his ear because he liked to feel prepared. On the left of the rails lay a burying ground no one visited because everyone already had. On the right spread a swamp, the locals used to warn children about, because what else do you call a blackness that can take you by the knees and keep you? He had made this walk before. He told himself that knowing a path is better than lighting it, and he stepped out. He saw something by the fence line, shape that didn't belong. Bent away backs aren't meant to bend. He finished his cigarette. He lit another and held the flame up so close to his face he squinted against the heat. The shape didn't change. There's a say in those parts, if you out crazy, crazy changes its mind. So he did something that made no sense except to the part of him that wanted to live. He took off his pants, tied them around his head like a turban, and walked like a king toward nothing at all. When he got home, his mother made a sound he remembered hearing only once before, when a calf stood up and fell over wrong. He slept like drowning. The next night, a hurricane lamp swung in his room and made weak suns on the wallpaper. He saw the door, and he saw, simultaneously, something come through the door that hadn't opened. It was as tall as a man and covered in hair that looked like it would be tinder dry under your palm. Half asleep, he told himself he was dreaming. Then a hand slid under his neck, and another slid under the bend of his knee, and he rose off the bed as if he weighed nothing at all. His throat closed like a fist. He tried to make a sound. He couldn't. The room tilted in slow degrees. At the doorway, something loosened. His voice, the hold on him, and he fell hard enough onto his parents to knock breath out of 3 bodies at once. The lamp swung so crazily it made a dozen suns on the wall, then steadied like it remembered itself. In the morning, his mother plucked coarse black hairs off his skin, the way wives pick burrs off wool pants after a walk in the fields. They were too thick to be his, too long to belong to any animal they knew, and when she held one up to the lamp, it shone like a string pulled from a black sweater and made you think of fire.